tuned in again to the Journey 2020. We like to say here at the Journey that the journey is from me to you and from you to me. And me is Dr. John Robertson, clinical psychologist, who is one of your co-hosts. And I have to say, my indomitable, Charles, did you like that one? My indomitable co-host, Charles Morris, is here with me, and we have a dynamic and very important show to share with you tonight. Charles?
You know, I keep telling you, each show I'm going to have to carry a dictionary so I can actually understand, because it's like each week you give me a word that I haven't heard before.
Okay.
But I'm hoping it's something good.
Well,
okay.
As they say, I know that your street sense would tell if it was not a positive.
Well, you know what? I would feel like right at home if you said, "Here's my homie." So I'm good.
Okay. Well, I give you a little bit more than homie. Okay.
No, homie's good. Homie's
good.
Anyway, hello everybody. I'm Charles Morris. Welcome to the Journey 2020. As you see, we like to have fun here, but we also bring a lot of things to the show. And today we're blessed because we have some very good people doing some great things in the community. And the older I get, the more I'm amazed about some of the things that you see. And then you're just kind of blown away also. There's good, but there's bad. But the good always supersedes the bad. And so we got some good people here today. So Dr. Robinson is here to tell us about what we're talking about today.
Okay.
All right.
Our topic, and it was interesting, Charles. I was telling somebody that I work with clinically what the topic was, and the interesting response was, that's a great topic, but I don't know if I can watch. And tonight, I would say that to our audience, please just hang in there with us. We have something that is at times painful to discuss, but extremely important. And that is sexual assault and sexual assault against women.
Right. I was able to meet Miss Wilson last week at a friend of Adrian. Actually, you have met Adrian, but you don't know that you've met Adrian.
Oh, okay.
He's one of the gentlemen that runs the martial arts through my event that I do every year. But you've seen, he's the one that actually got me started 12 years ago.
Okay.
And through the conversation that took place at his event last week, because he was talking about some of the self-defense, some of the things that you can do if you're attacked. But one of the shows that I watch daily is I Survived, and I think I talked with them about that last week. And the stories that you hear, and it's just so horrific, it's almost like it's hard to believe that that's a human being violating someone and having no conscience of what they're doing. And so it's just mind-boggling, that spirit. So I don't know if we get a chance to talk about that as well.
I believe that we will. To introduce our guest tonight, right in front of me, is Ms. Jessica Mueller, who is a licensed social worker, and also who is one of the sexual assault counselors at the Victims Service Center here in Orlando. Beside her is someone that I just met a few minutes ago, but it feels like a friend already, and that is Miss Kathy Renfro. And Kathy is someone who I also just heard is going to become a board member at the Victim Service Center. So an early congratulations to you, Kathy. And beside her is an old new friend, Reverend Gail Gardner. And Reverend Gail, who has been on our show before, tonight she is in a somewhat different role, but a role that is, I must say, one of her most important missions. And I'll let her talk about that a little bit later. But I'd like to start out first. Often when we talk about sexual assault and violence against women, there comes somehow a cloud, and one of the first questions that comes up is is this really a problem, and how big of a problem is it? So I'd like to ask Jessica if you fill us in as to how much of a problem is this aspect of sexual assault and violence against women?
Certainly, I'd be glad to. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for having us. I think it's April, so it's Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and I think it's great that you are hosting a topic about sexual assault. That's wonderful. So to start off with, approximately 1 in 6 women are thought to be sexually assaulted on an annual basis. So it's about 17% of the population, maybe could be a little bit more. The numbers, they might not be 100% accurate. It could be much higher because of reporting is so low, because it's still a taboo topic to talk about. And so there's a lot of things that prevent people from coming forward when they're sexually assaulted. But we believe that it's about 1 in 6 women who experience sexual assault. It's not just women. There are men, too, that are sexually assaulted, and the reporting rates are even lower. So at approximately 1 in 33 men, could be higher. We just don't know for sure. In terms of the Central Florida area, compared to the United States, Orlando's crime rate is about double that of the United States. As a whole, the U.S. experiences about 214 violent crimes per 100,000 people. In Orlando, in particular, it would be about 458 per 100,000 people that are assaulted. So it's a pretty big increase compared to the rest of the United States.
Now, do you take those statistics based on some of the reports that are not reported, or is that based on the ones that are reported?
These are based off of the ones that are reported through the National Criminal Justice
Plus,
Department.
we know that there's many that are not.
Of course, yes. So that's why we're probably thinking it's significantly higher. Yeah.
One of the things, as we talk about the numbers and the underreporting, I just happened to tune in last night at I believe it was a CNN follow-up to the incident with the quarterback at Florida. Was it Florida? James Winston.
FSU.
Oh, FSU. Okay.
Right.
I'm still getting over.
The Gators don't want you to get that mixed up with them.
I hear you.
Yeah, FSU, Seminole.
FSU.
Tallahassee.
I think I'm still in shock, over their winning. But one of the things that came up in that report, and Kathy and Reverend Gail, was the type of reporting that was done in that case. There were a lot of apparent flaws in that. And there were still a number of questions that remained because of that. In addition, that the young lady that reported the assault, one of the things that was stressed is that her credibility with the reporting was put into some question. Now, that's just one particular instance, but I wanted to get both of your thoughts and opinions as to, in reporting, is it a problem in terms of the kind of stigma that Jessica just mentioned, and the kind of seriousness or the credibility that is often either attributed or not attributed to the reporter?
Yeah.
So could you comment on that?
Yeah, and let me first clear up, Doctor, so that Jessica will go back to the office and tell Louis, Miani, we got a new board member. But Catherine is going to be the board member for Rafa Soul Care and Empowerment Institute.
Oh, it's Rafa Soul Care. Oh, okay. I thought it was sexual.
Do we have a new board member?
Okay, well, I'm glad you corrected that. Okay.
I can see
I
him.
probably have.
I can see him now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. But what I'm really, as you know, I was a victim of sexual abuse as a child and raped back on April 29th, 1988 here in the city. And what I'm finding is it was reported because I ran next door to the neighbor. That doesn't happen as far as our communities are concerned in some cases. The stigma is a big deal in the African American community, the Haitian community. Most communities of color tend to keep it in the family, keep it behind closed doors. Therefore, yes, I say the numbers are higher. I target churches because that's a cosmo, you know, of well, they are actually like little towns and cities. I think that word escapes me today. But what you have, yeah, we have that. And what happens is that all the cultural things that happen within them in the black communities or the Hispanic communities, generally it's not, there's some things that's just not discussed. And what is discussed is most likely tearing at the core of what people's beliefs are, because now we're talking about digging into my spiritual beliefs. And if I go outside of the walls of my spiritual belief, then I don't believe that one who, you know, who says that can heal me, can do this. And I told you, somebody once told me, oh, just get over it, you know. And that's, and then you have, in Kathy's instance, and I'm gonna let her talk, is when she told her mother she didn't believe her. So we have a lot of things like that, and I don't think it's about race, but I know that the mythical cultural is so thick within these different cultures that, and mental health, that part, that's not even mentioned. You know, it's not. And I went and got some help, but mental health is not mentioned, and so it's not connected. You know, one sees the connection. There's the support group issue is gone. You know, there's no support group. You know, firm foundation there in the family. That's not there. So I would think that the numbers are, yes, drastically higher than we can ever imagine. And I can't tell you how many times people have told me they were sexually abused. And I had a text yesterday. After a radio broadcast, and I called, and I have not heard yet. And that's, she texted me, and I told her I'd call her, and I called her, and left her a message, and I haven't heard from her yet. And that's what generally happens. Somewhere along the line, they lose that they're intimidated by that.
Right. We've actually on earlier shows, along with Monica May, who I've been working with for a period for years, and I've been at several events with Monica May, and she has the gift to just pick them out. You know, she's talking, and I've seen her do it more than once, more than twice, more than 3 times. Right in the middle of her seminar, she can, once she starts talking, she go tell such, you pull that one aside, pull that one aside. They take them outside. At my event last year, she was one of my guest speakers, you know, to the girls. And she came up to me afterwards. She said, Charles, I don't know what's going on for the rest of the day, but this event was supposed to be for me to be here to talk to 2 girls at your event. That's why we're here today. And I go like, oh, okay.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So it happens a lot.
And I think that that's so important because, as Reverend Gail was saying, that someone told her, just get over it. And I don't think that at times that there is an appreciation of the at times the soul-shattering impact of sexual assault. And so, Kathy, I know that you had mentioned to Reverend Gail your own experience, and I wonder if you would just talk about that a bit.
Well, I was a victim of molestation and rape at the age of 5. And it was to a point, it was a relative. And I happened to tell my mother. She did not believe me, so I just suppressed it. I just put it in the back and I just moved on. But it continued to happen to me, you know. So it was just to a point where each time it happened, it pretty much just kills your self-esteem, you know, when you're violated like that. And I am here to help women to come out of that place that they're in, because it's to a point where you feel like it's your fault. And the first thing that you have to do is to forgive yourself. You have to forgive the one that actually violated you. You have to get to that point. You have to have a support system also. You have to talk to somebody. It was at a point where I didn't get the help until I was like in my 40s. So I went on all of that time, you know, like putting the best on the outside, but the whole time I was just like, just dying on the inside. You know, it was like a cancer. You know, it was like just eating me up. You know, I would have a tendency, you know, each time I would hurt or what have you, you know, I would go into the shell. So we as women, we're here to help those that, you know, have gone through you know, these episodes and the traumatization of the, you know, being a victim of rape and molestation, incest. So, you know, you have to talk to somebody. You have to. It's very important. It's imperative that you talk to someone.
You know, I can share with you. There were some things that I saw as a kid growing up that I did not know it was abnormal. I did, but I didn't. And even things that I saw that seemed to have been normal, when you get older, you go like, wow, when you realize what it was. And then you come, and it's never talked about. And to this day, it has never been talked about,
Right.
you know, in my family. And actually, this is the first time I actually ever brought it up, you know. But like I said, over the years, there's times when you see something and it flashes and you think about it and you just go like, wow, but it's never been talked about. It's just amazing, you know.
You know, Charles, I think that's so important what you just mentioned, and that is at times accepting the abnormal as being normal. And I think that as you talked about what you observed as a youngster, I remember growing up in Harlem, and on Friday night, that it would be nothing unusual to hear the screams and the hits, you know, etc., coming from other apartments in our tenement. And as a youngster, you know, I said, well, you know, this is strange. But then I said, oh, I guess that's what happens, you know, in families between men and women. So as what was abnormal, depending on, and again, I'm not going to put it on race because it happens in all communities, black, white, you know, Latino, Asian American, you know, etc. But what I learned early on was that there's something strange happening, but not knowing how to talk about it, and as a youngster, thinking that, well, this is not to be talked about. So I want to get back to Jessica, and as we're talking about not talking about sexual assault and not talking about the abnormal in the family. Jessica, as a counselor, how do you deal with that? How have you encountered it, and what do you do when you encounter that?
That's a great question. It is very difficult, and it doesn't happen right away. Typically, it's a process that you go through, and so you gradually learn about sexual assault, or you listen to somebody else say it out loud, and then maybe a month, maybe 2 months, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years later, you're able to talk about it. As long as you're working on that process, though,
Right.
That's what matters the most. And thank you guys for sharing, because I think it really, there could be somebody out there who has experienced something similar,
That's right.
and just by hearing you guys have the courage to come out and talk about it, may be the factor that allows them to call us. We have 6 victim advocates and 2 licensed therapists on staff, and that's what we do all day.
That's right.
Is we wait for people to call us, and we bring them in and we let them share their story, and it's very empowering for somebody to to meet someone who will listen to them, and they get to tell their story and with no judgment. And
Yes.
whether or not they reported it to the police, it really doesn't matter, because they're healing. They're going through the process. So.
Right.
Just as you talked about having someone there to listen, I would tend to think that that is just absolutely critical. Someone listening to what has happened to, to a young girl or to a mature woman, etc. And I want to again ask Pastor Gail, in terms of listening or having someone who would hear what you were saying, how important was that, once you began to focus in and deal with the issue?
What you will find me at Jessica's mostly doing informational briefings, get there telling my story. And the one thing I encourage people is and I ask people, what's your story? And I'm asking them in general, and all of a sudden they just begin to unload things that they may not have said to someone else. When you have a chance to tell or talk about what's going on with you, that's the beginning of healing. Disclosure is the beginning of healing. I'm a pastoral counselor, certified pastoral counselor, but I had some mental health training, and even before I got that, I remembered that it was when the more I talked, the more I felt at ease. And I began to feel that way at the Victim Service Center, talking not with someone, but in the meetings that we would have as part of as a volunteer, we would talk about, discuss how we got there and what have you. And I began to talk more and more. The more I began to talk, and I think I wrote something for the newsletter, and the more I began to talk, the better I felt. And I had gone for years mentioning it, but not talking about it, not disclosing the whole story, not hearing myself talk about it. And you'll find a lot of times people don't want to because of the memories. And once they start jarring those memories, you see, now we're talking about pain and bringing some things back. But it is needful. And so you take them a little step at a time. I personally refer people to professionals who have a license to do this, but I generally, before people who come to me about something else, I find this out, what their story is, and that being able to unload and just to cry and to weep before they get to the next step, before they're referred on somewhere else, before they even say, okay, I'll go. Because sometimes they tell you, no, I don't want to go anywhere else, all I can do is come to you. And I say, okay, no problem. Go ahead and finish. So it's really something to be able to tell someone, you're going to have to go deep into those memories, into a place. I was in my 40s. It was just after the rape that I remember asking, why does this keep happening to me? And re-victimization is real. If you've been victimized in one area, you most likely going to be victimized in another. The percentages are high.
Wow.
So through the years, I could see where I had been, there had been not another rape until then, but there was a domestic violence, was real in more than one case. And so you find yourself going through that. So you're talking about having people to really talk about some things that are so painful. And all you can do is just listen if they decide to talk. But I've seen people go away never talking about it, and then 6 months later call me and say, hey, you know what, I need to say something to you. I said, okay. And they'll talk about something else, and then they'll ease into that, because they know it's not going any further, number one, and that I'm willing to listen. So disclosure is the first step of healing, and just taking a little step at a time helps. And I tell people, I say, write. Put in your journal, just begin to write. And that works too. And I guess Jessica knows that, of course, in her professional status.
Yeah. Two things that actually three things that you mentioned, Pastor, and when you talk, there's such a richness to it. But as you talked about disclosure being the first step, I think that is so important. The other thing that you talked about was referring individuals to a license, and I'm gonna, even though I'm licensed, I want to say the license is not so important, but someone who's competent.
Competent,
Okay.
yes.
Because,
Yes.
and pardon my colleagues out there,
Yes.
there are quite a number of people who are licensed and they still are not competent.
Still not
Okay.
competent.
But someone who that person has a sense that they can trust them.
Yes.
Okay. And I think that the other thing that you touched on a bit is and you hadn't mentioned confidentiality, but being able to have that conversation be a private one, and not, because I think that in our community, and correct me if I'm wrong, okay, one of the issues is that I don't know if I want to tell my business because I don't know where it might wind up being. You know, would you or Kathy, just talk about that a little bit?
Kathy? Well, the thing that I want to just piggyback on as far as what you said, when the healing started coming forth for me, I was in a ministry, and it was to a point where I had a pastor that was just, he was just really, really, spiritually sharp. So he told me, he says, well, Catherine, he says, I've been before the Lord for 3 days, trying to figure out why you keep blocking me out. And he says, what happened to you? I mean, he just came out with it, he says, what happened to you as a child? And when he called me and asked me that, I mean, I was just a bag of water, so he was just explaining to me that it needed to come out because I had, suppressed that for so many years, and the thing is, that's when the healing begins, So now, I'm at the point now, there was once upon a time, I couldn't talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it because of the hurt and the pain, but now, I am at the point where I can talk about it, and I'm here to help other women come from under that, because it holds them in captivity, for so long. So, Doctor, I call the stage in Jessica and Victim Service Center, Central Florida, receive people who have just been raped or abused, and it's a shame. We're collecting at my church right now underwear for them. That's one of our projects. And you have people who come as victims, and then they go into this, prayerfully they go, because some people just like being the victim. Right. They don't move from that place. They're still there because of the trauma. Not because they don't want to, but because they're still dealing with the pain. Right. But they're from victim to survivor. And I believe when you start, like Catherine and I and anyone else who's been abused, and I do advocacy and social justice on behalf of abuse. I'm from Tallahassee to DC, and I'm saying that what happens is when you have come to the place where you can move forward, then you become what I call a thriver. You're thriving. You are actually moving on ahead and to help some others to pull them out too.
Well, let me ask you, because I think that that differentiation between being a victim and being a survivor is a very important one. Yes. And I'd like to ask Jessica if you could just touch on that a bit. What is the difference, or is there a difference?
Being a victim is kind of like a legal term also. You're the victim of the event. There's a perpetrator and then there's the victim. Surviving is pretty much every moment from that point on, after you leave that situation where you're working every day to pretty much stay alive. You're just surviving. Sometimes it's a journey that lasts a very long time. You're surviving just in the same place that you were. And then, like you said, thriving is the last part where you've completed your counseling or you're working on it, and you can talk about your story and reach out to other people. And it's pretty amazing to see somebody go from a victim all the way till when they're
Yeah.
thriving, and maybe they're leading their own support group, or
Yes.
they're reaching out to young girls. So it's a pretty cool thing to watch.
And I think that it's really important to find, to see where you are. There's a place that's called being stuck. Stuckness is the term, believe it or not, where you are in a place where you can't move beyond the trauma. And so that's when you find that you're surviving, you can be surviving, but yet you're still dealing with some things. Like I said, that you're not going anywhere, but you are going day by day, living your life where you are. And that's important to know, to be able to know that, because you are in, you're going. I was going up the ecclesiastical ladder from one, ordination to another when the rape happened, and I'm like, okay, what is going on here? So I'm thinking, in my mind, that obviously God, I think you love me. But maybe something's happening here and it has nothing to do with you. So I can imagine how many other people and who may find themselves, at a place where what's going on with me? I'm now the president of the company. So.
I've heard Ms. Gardner tell a story a couple of times, and when she tells a story, she talks about how she acted out because of what had happened. Yours happened at such a young age. Did you go through the same thing, acting out, and people not understanding what was going on because of what was going on the inside? And she was saying that, like sometimes you got sent down to the principal's office and, you were angry, you got into fights, and those things kind of took place.
Yeah.
Did the same thing happen with you?
Yes, most definitely. I did get into a lot of fights, but it was to a point where that was my way of acting out. I just thought I could take on the world, and I mean, it was to a point where, you have these tendencies to just lash out at people. There were times where I was quiet, and I didn't say a whole lot. But the thing is, when somebody hit that button, they hit that button, it was like I was just ready to.
No, it's interesting because you understand and then you don't understand from just the people around you just not picking up on certain things.
Right.
And it's just amazing because usually in the village, it's kind of like I always say, if there's 11 children, usually out of the 11 children, you may have 2 of them that you go, now you just need to leave that one alone. But usually the other 8 or 9 are okay, and they try to uplift the 1 or 2 that's kind of go astray. But it's just interesting in the circle, in the village, that there was that one person that kind of said, I think there's something wrong.
Of course.
And that kind of goes back to my family as well, because when I think, but even more so, the more I think about some of the things that I saw as a child, because when I was in like 16 years old, I can remember, and it was normal, because I saw somebody that was 29, 30 years old taking advantage of 15 and 16-year-old girls. But in that circle, it was seen normal at the time. Okay, so then when I became 29, 30 years old, that was still in the back of my mind. And I'm trying to think, how do you talk to a 16-year-old girl, 16, 17-year-old girl? And I'm like, oh, wow, I think they were breaking the law. Well, I'm saying, back then I didn't know they was breaking the law.
Right.
And it was a kind of a normal thing in the circle. And then when I became it, because for some reason I remember that person being 29, and then I remember the 16-year-old. So then when I became 29, it popped in my mind, and I was like, oh, wow. So that was a wild moment for me. I mean, just the mentality. But, it wasn't against the will of the 16-year-old, but it was the manipulation of the 29-year-old.
Exactly.
And I think that that's important when at times trying to define what is rape or what is violation or what is exploitation, because I've heard parents come into a clinical setting and to say, well, with her little fast self, okay, talking about a 13 or 14-year-old, I'm not surprised that this happened. But I want to go back and to share with our audience, if you will. We're real here at the Journey, so we have a little sound effects in the back, so don't even worry about it. Okay. Jessica, I don't know if you can help us with this. Sometimes people say, well, this happened years back, and yes, now talked about a young girl. Well, I was 13 or 14. I should have known better, but he was 25, 26, etc. What's the is there a an expiration of the law in terms of being able to adjudicate something like that, or to bring charges? Because I've heard some women in my clinical practice say, he's gotten away with it, and I don't know if my niece may be at risk, or my sister's children, or other women in the family. So I just would like you to touch on that a bit.
Sure. The whole idea that it becomes a question as to whether or not it was sexual assault or not is another factor that can sometimes stop people from reporting, period. Wondering if it really was rape, or thinking you consented when you really didn't, or being under the influence. All of those things can affect that. But when it comes to, has it been too long to report, we always just say, make the report. If it's something that you want to do, whether it's been a year or 7 years, and let the law enforcement decide, because maybe there's already a pending case against the person that's more recent, and the report would help the situation out. But some kind of confusing things sometimes happen after the, in the criminal justice process. So I would always recommend that if making the report will benefit somebody, that they make the report, because sometimes that can be very liberating to make the report and just have it in paper and have a record of it, whether or not legally they're able to prosecute the case. At that moment, probably not the most important thing. More of like the power that you feel from making a report.
I'm going to open up a can of worms for you. That's normally what I do on the show. I usually open up the can of worms. Because of our society and how we are as a culture, and one of the things that always come into play is that once that trial starts, when it's a rape trial or something like that, and they talk about what the woman is going to go through. She's going to be drilled, and she's going to be basically put down, probably going to take you through that whole thing again. And Dr. Robinson, I ask you this. Is it part of the problem is because of who we are as a culture and how we look at men, by the mere fact that if I'm stimulated, then that gives me the okay, because all of a sudden, because I have no blood going to my brain, so therefore I can't think. And by how dare you stimulate me, and then you don't carry through on what I think should be the act that should follow. So you're more of, you provoked me, and you really don't have no say-so after I'm stimulated. So is that part of the problem in our culture, in our mindset, in our stupidity?
Definitely.
No, go ahead, Jessica. No, I was going to say, I'd like to have Jessica answer, then I'll put my 2 cents in. Okay, go ahead.
I would say definitely. I think that the law has caught up for the most part, but the general opinion of the public has not caught up. And rape is not about sexual attraction, it's about power and control. And so there is nothing that a girl can do to prevent from being raped, nothing. So we know that, but in a courtroom, it might not feel like that's the general rule. So yes, I think that would definitely stop somebody, that fear. Whether or not it's a reality when you get on the stand, sometimes yes, sometimes no, but for the most part, I would say no. It's not an issue anymore.
Because actually sometimes you try to turn it around and make the other person the victim.
Right.
Yeah, and I have to agree wholeheartedly with Jessica. and it also, I'm sure that Reverend Gardner and Kathy, would also concur that there's that old saying, how'd it go? Well, the way that she dressed, she must have been asking for it, or the way that she came on to me, so-called. It was, it wasn't my fault. Just Charles, just what you're saying.
Now, when I do my workshops, when I do my seminars, I do have those kind of conversations with the females because I have to be real with them. Okay, because as you know, when you talk to the young ladies, the perception of how they dress. So when you walk in, then the perception, and then it starts from there. So you try to educate them on saying, especially nowadays, oh Lord, it's just like, wow, it's just like, okay. It's like, even when I go to church, did you just leave the club to come? No, but anyway, it's almost like,
That's true.
It's
That's true.
it's scary sometimes because it's almost like they don't understand really how the world works in the sense of the mindset. Because you do have the freedom of dressing and doing what you want. But I got enough common sense that if I'm in New York City, I don't walk around with chains, hanging across my neck and looking around like I'm a tourist. I have the right to wear my chains, but the reality of it is now I'm setting myself up to become a victim. So you do try to get them to understand the realities of the world. Nobody has the right to violate you, but the reality of it is, don't put yourself in a situation, be smart. You can still express yourself, but have a better understanding of reality.
And I would say that statistically speaking, the majority of sexual assaults are occurring in people's homes and in their bedrooms and in their living room. And so sometimes they're wearing their pajamas or they're wearing a sweatsuit, or so when it comes down to the actual numbers, I would say that it's not always about what you're wearing. It's almost never about what you're wearing. It's simply about opportunity and power and control.
Well, that's kind of separate what I was talking about. But I'm talking about, I'm with the guys. Okay, I'm with the guys, and we're having conversation. Then there's a person that walks into the room. Now we're talking about the conversation, and then the mindset and what takes place after that was more about what that was, and trying to educate them on the perception of what they walk in the room with, to kind of help them when they're saying, well, I'm looking for a boyfriend, and then you want it to go someplace positive, but truthfully, yes, because like you said, at the workshop, at Adrian's event where I met Ms. Wilson, one of the things that he tried to explain was how to take back the control, because he gave a couple of examples of when the attacker attacked. Part of the seminar and the workshop was trying to take back the control from the guy, because like you said, it's not about the sexual part, it's about the control. How do you take back the control? And that was part of what the workshop was about as well.
That's with Reverend Gardner and Kathy. I wanted to ask you, and Charles really started talking about how to take back control. How do both of you feel that young women can protect themselves against sexual assault and taking back the power, so-called?
I take the chance of sounding opinionated, and I don't want to. And Charles was right, because I have counseled people, a young lady from my church, regarding something that was said to her out of the way by a leader. And I didn't say anything to her then, but I'm noticing the way she dresses. And even though if he's weak and he wants that control, if he is a controlling, person and wants to prove himself, that she can set herself up for that and not, and at the same time be insulted. She has rights, and she should be able to exert her rights. I'm doing a workshop tomorrow, a session with adolescent girls. And I'm not going to talk about sexual abuse, but I'm going to talk about abuse and how to recognize it on the wheel. And so the one thing I want to let them know that sex abuse, it has nothing to do with sex. It is about control. But understand that people, depending on who the individual is, that might be his appetite to cause that control to come into play. Do you understand what I'm saying?
That might be the excuse.
Yeah, the excuse.
Okay.
You understand? And so when you have an issue with that, the way you're approached, understand that even though this is the times and the times are different and all that, and I get that. But know that you might have some issues with some people because of the way you are, the way you dress, and it has, they right away, somebody who uses that excuse would label you and figure that you're weak enough to put yourself in that position that they can take advantage of. That rape and sexual abuse, like Jessica was saying, happens basically to people you know. Very little. There's stranger rape is almost null. It's generally people you know. So it could happen with the people you come into contact with at school, at work, at church, in organizations that you belong to. Somebody who has some kind of identification with you in some way. It can easily happen.
Yeah, this is just interesting to me. Like, I don't have children, but I work a lot with children, and I don't know how, as a parent, you just don't tell your kid, people crazy. People are just crazy, and they need to understand that. And so, understanding what that means is that there's just certain things that you have to do to protect yourself. You want to express yourself, but there's a certain level of which you have to have some common sense sometimes and understanding the ways of the world. And I understand that as a child, but as a parent, I just got to stress people crazy. Just people crazy. They're crazy.
It's a lot of people.
You walk out there with logic, and if you're like, no, there's no logic. They're crazy.
Yes, there's some issues.
One of the things, just to kind of piggyback on that point, I remember working with a group of young people, and we had both boys and girls. And young lady, one of our rules in the group was, don't come in sagging, as in with your pants or whatever you're wearing down below your underclothes, and don't come in, with the girls with what do they call those the little bands that they were?
The
halter
tops.
There's a halter tops. Okay.
Yeah.
And we had one young lady that came in with that, and we had to tell her that was just not acceptable in the group. Well, she went home, told her mom. The mom called us up and blessed us out, saying that she had bought the clothes for her daughter, and that who were we to tell her daughter that she couldn't wear X, Y, or Z. So I've raised that little vignette to say that sometimes I don't put as much, if you want to call it, blame or responsibility on the young person, because again, they're developing, and as you know, all of us as teenagers, have used bad judgment at times. But usually there was a parent that, or in my case, both parents, that would haul me up real quick if I stepped out of line. And so part of the thing I wanted to ask the panel in terms of what, and this is around protecting girls or women against rape. What do you think that the role of parents could or should be in giving guidance, to their children?
I can address that. I think that we are not paying enough attention to our young boys, and teaching young boys and perpetrating young girls not to perp on other girls, as opposed to asking potential victims not to dress a certain way, because in theory, it really wouldn't matter how she dressed. And she could be wearing, you know, head to toe covering.
This is true.
Right, everything but her eyes. But if we can talk to young boys especially who don't really learn about sexual assault when they're young and teaching them about how no means no at a very early age, then maybe that shift could help to bring victims out of the dark and to really lower some numbers.
I agree. I agree.
Right.
And you know what? I'm also at the place where it took me a while, but I'm starting to tell people that I talk with that forgiveness is a process in some cases, and sometimes what you have to do is look at the perspective of the perpetrator. What was his life like? And you'll find that is no, you know, you don't want to side with that, but understand that people come from different walks of life, and they were not trained, they were not taught to.
Right.
They saw this in their home, they saw this in their family, and so.
That's a great point. Yeah.
So as I've heard many times that abusers tend to have been abused themselves.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's one of the things that I'm hearing. So Kathy, I noticed you were nodding your head as we were talking about just some of the things that we can talk to our young people about, and I wonder if you had some thoughts about that.
Well, one of the things that I would like to share is I see some of the things that's going on with the young people where, you know, they have to set a standard for themselves. There's a scripture that says, you know, the parents have to train a child up in the way that you would have them to go. So a lot of training has to come from the parents in the home. This is where, you know, parenting and training comes from. It starts in the home. So a lot of the young people, just as Pastor said, you know, it's a thing where the perpetrators have gone through some abuse themselves. So, you know, they may not have had the love or the nurturing and the upbringing to just help them to get through some things. So, you know, some of the things they do it for attention, you know. So I just wanted to,
right. So starting, Kathy, so in getting your point, so starting at a young age and raising that child with certain standards, you know, certain values, you know, certain expectations. Am I hearing you when you're saying that you may not be able to be there 24/7 with that young person, but you will have given them some direction, some guidance, etc.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And I like the fact that Jessica raised the importance of talking to our young boys about setting some standards for themselves, you know, and certain expectations.
They're actually talking with Ms. Wilson, and they're doing all of my workshops at my summit this year, and that's one of the workshops that we're talking about doing.
Okay.
That will be taking place in
What's the workshop again? Just so I can make sure I sit in that one. Go ahead.
Well, help me out, because she sent me a list of workshops, and she's asking me to pick the ones that I want. But she's talking about how to be aware, and you may be setting yourself up to where you're violating. And help me out if I'm right.
You're right.
Right. And so they're trying to set them up where you're in high school, especially when you go off to college, and then so they can be mentally and better prepared.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, that's such an important point, that high school to college transition, because I remember back in my ancient days that there were folks who can't describe it other than, and this is both boys and girls, you know, getting to be men and women, who I thought lost their minds as soon as they hit that college campus.
Right.
And where the some of the social kind of expectations that they fell into things that were not, of their values.
As me and you and I can have a conversation that they wouldn't understand. but that's like they can have a conversation that we can't understand.
Right.
So when she made reference to about whether or not the woman was fully dressed and becoming a victim, which it was a total different conversation in which I was saying about when she coming in hoochie. Okay, because that's a totally different conversation. Because as a man, as we sitting there, when she walks in, now my mentality it is not necessarily about violating her in the sense of raping her, but my approach to her, my mentality toward her, even my first words to her, is going to be based on, oh, you loose. So now I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive towards just trying to get you to the end of the night. I may not be trying to rape you, but I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive to try to have the outcome I want to have by the end of the night.
Right.
So you understand what I'm saying?
Right. In other words, that the probability of quote unquote getting over,
Right.
It just is raised by.
In my mind, it just went up. Like, oh no, I don't want to talk to her. I want to talk to you. And now I'm going after you because of the perception you just gave me.
But I'm like Jessica, they actually become two separate conversations. The only reason why is because you can logically think as a man of what's happening. A perpetrator doesn't have that type of logic. He's not, it's not about the clothes or anything. When men are wired different than women, we know that, we get that.
Yes,
So when a woman walks into the room, men tend to stand attention. The whole 9 yards kicks in. Okay, we get that. But when we talk about a perpetrator of sex and sexual abuse, rape and sexual abuse, we're talking about someone who does not have that. That doesn't even become in play.
Okay.
What she has on doesn't even come in play.
Right. So
It doesn't.
That's why I said something totally different.
Yeah.
In the conversation that we was having, something totally different.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, she might look at, ooh, look at you, baby, so forth, and that could, but like say, it's the excuse. It's the excuse that they use, but it's not the. You would, if young lady say something, you say something to the young lady and she don't answer you, you back off because you know right away that's not him.
Right.
He's not going to do that.
Right.
He's not going to do that. Matter of fact, that turns him on.
Okay. I see something with an 800 number on it. What is that? What is that?
Yes, this is
Hold it up.
Yes.
This
is one of our. This is a resource that we like to give out. It's the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, and this is for no matter what state you live in. This is the number you can call right here, and and based on the area code of the phone number that you're calling from, they will direct you to the rape crisis center in your area.
That's right.
And so if you're calling from a 407 number, you'll come directly to us. And the message that we want to send is that you could show up to a party wearing no clothes. If you say no, you say no. And regardless of the message that you give across, that's it. No means no.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent.
Any last words? Because we got about 30 seconds.
I just want to add one thing. With the perpetrator, some of these things come down, they are passed down from generation to generation. So I just wanted to add to add there, somewhere it has to be, nipped in the bud. So I just wanted to share that for those women that are out there, if you have experienced and went through these traumatic situations, you need a support system. Please talk about it.
And what I'd like to do, Reverend Gardner, Kathy, since you all are a local resource, how can folks find you if they want to make a connection?
They can call me on my private line, 407-485-6673. And if it's about rape or sexual abuse, I will direct them probably to where I've been directing them, and to the Victim Service Center, Central Florida. If it's just a general question or just something they want some counseling, as a pastoral counselor that doesn't deal with anything of mental health, call me.
And I've been putting up the number, the 407-497-5701 number.
Yeah, give me a call. We
Yeah,
can
yeah.
we can set up an appointment.
I've been putting that up the entire show.
Definitely, that's great.
All right.
Well, with those last words, we want to thank you, audience, again for listening to us. We hope that we've given you some food for thought. And as we like to say, the journey is from me to you and from you to me. For those of you who celebrate, happy Passover and a happy Easter to you. And join us next week for another version of the Journey 2020. Good night.